Hello, readers. Welcome to another reading class with me, Miss Taylor. All right, so let's see if we are ready to read. Do we have our textbook? Do we have a bookmark or our finger? Workbook? Pencil? Check. We're going to remember to track with our finger, kind of follow along. We're going to read each word carefully. We're going to pay attention to end marks. Some of our goals we're going to read with accuracy and expression. We're going to understand what's happening in the story. We're going to make some connections to how characters are feeling, and we're going to enjoy the story. All right, keeping in mind that reading is thinking. Anytime we are reading, our brain is doing all kinds of amazing things. So, our brain is making connections between things, maybe connections between how the characters feel and how we felt at one time. Could be connections between a story that we're reading now with a story that we already read before. Could be making all kinds of connections with maybe other things that have happened in our lives. We are visualizing, we're kind of painting a picture of what's happening. This whole time we've been reading about Henry and Tim and their migration south from Canada down to Florida and kind of what they've been learning and thinking about and how Henry has been helping Tim and Tim's been learning things and um, all kinds of things we can imagine in our minds and kind of picture their journey. We're asking questions, we're wondering, we're kind of searching for answers and kind of doing a lot of predicting and kind of checking. We're summarizing, we're thinking about, oh, let's see what happened in the last story. So in the last story, the flock reached Florida. So remember that Henry and Tim kind of went along with this other flock that was really nice, and the leader said that they could come with them. And then they reached Crooked Lake and they're just about to go down, and Henry and Tim are really excited to see their family and be reunited with them. So we can summarize, we can think about, what happened in the story and kind of say it in a few sentences. We're predicting, we're kind of taking some guesses about what's going to happen, and then we're checking where we right, where we not right, and then we repredict. We are inferring, we're figuring stuff out using the text evidence, using what we already know to kind of learn new things and figure out new things. And then we're synthesizing, we're generating some new ideas. So today, as we finish, this is kind of the last story about Henry and Tim. We're kind of finishing our story, and we can start kind of synthesizing and generating some new ideas about, especially about like how Henry and Tim were helping each other and keeping each other company. And we can think about kind of making some connections and also thinking about some new ideas. When was a time that I helped someone? And maybe when is a time that I could help someone in the future? Kind of getting some new ideas for being helpful. Remember how Henry thought it was so nice to feel needed and like somebody needed his help. So, and also kind of allowing our thinking to change. So we may have been thinking like, oh, that old Henry, that goose, he's not going to make it. Now we're like, you know what? He really persevered. He really used a lot of fortitude. And so did Tim, learning how to fly for the first time. So let's keep these things in mind as we read today. Here is our little agenda. We have let's see, we have a vocabulary sentence, some word lists. Let's see, do we have, oh yeah, we do have a vocabulary sentence today. And we have a nonfiction passage. We are going to learn a little bit about our next story, about some people who live in Alaska. So that'll be cool. And we have our fiction story. We're going to do a little review. Then we have our workbook. We're going to read for 20 more minutes. And let's see. Okay, so here is our new vocabulary sentence. And our vocabulary sentence today is scientists do not ignore ordinary things. Alrighty. So scientists do not ignore ordinary things. Scientists are highly trained people who study different things about the world. Some scientists study water, some study the sun, so they can study all kinds of different things about the world. And when you don't pay attention to something, you ignore that thing. So, another way of saying she did not pay attention to the noisy children, she ignored the noisy children. Okay, let's see. So, things that you see all the time in different places are ordinary things. So, what do we call trees that you see all the time? Yeah, ordinary trees. All right, let's listen to that sentence again. Scientists do not ignore ordinary things. So, scientists are always observing, always looking around and noticing things. Let's see. So, everybody, what word means you don't pay attention to something? Ignore. Nice job. What do we call highly trained people who study different things about the world? Scientist. Nice job. And what word tells about things that you see all the time? Ordinary. Nice job. So, do scientists pay attention to ordinary things? Yes. Scientists do not ignore ordinary things. So, they pay attention to those things and they study those things. So, that is a really good thing for scientists to do. It's also a really good thing for readers to do, and for students to do, and for scholars to do. We pay attention to things and we notice and we observe and we kind of think about, did I already know that before? Did I notice that? Okay, so that is our new vocabulary sentence. Our lesson for today, it is lesson 12. We have some facts about Eskimos that we're going to read about. That's our nonfiction part. And then back to Canada. And this is the final story about Henry and Tim. Alrighty, so would you please join me on page 53 in your textbook? We have 4 word lists here, and you will notice that some of them, actually all of these, I think for today, have to do with our next story. So, kind of preparing us for the next story. So, let's go ahead and look under column 1. So, in column 1, the words in line 1 are polar bear. What words? The words in line 2 are ice floe. What words? An ice floe is a flat sheet of ice that floats in the ocean. Hmm, a flat sheet of ice that floats in the ocean. It's sort of like a flat iceberg. Kind of visualizing, I'm painting a picture in my mind. An ice floe, like a flat sheet of ice, like a flat iceberg. Word 3 is umu. What word? Umu, that's an interesting word. Word 4 is ulak. What word? Ulak. Yeah. And you might be thinking, I haven't heard these words before. Well, the reason you may have not heard them before, I wonder if you could predict why you haven't. These are the names of 2 characters in our next story that we're going to read about. 2 of the characters are named Umu and Ulak. So if you've never heard those words before, that is probably because they're the names of some fictional characters. All right, word 5 is shoulder. What word? Nice job. Let's read those words again the fast way. Polar bear, ice floe, umu, ulak, shoulder. Nice job. All right. Let's go to column 2. And in column 2, these words have more than one syllable. The first part of each word is underlined. Word 1, what's the underlined part? Good, pebble. And what's the whole word? Pebbled. Nice job. So things that are pebbled are covered with small stones. A road that is covered with small stones is called a pebbled road. Everybody, what do we call a beach that is covered with small stones? A pebbled beach. All right, word 2, what's the underlined part? Splat. Nice. What's the whole word? Splatter. All right. So when wet things hit something, they splatter and spread out. Everybody, what happens to a wet snowball when it hits something? It splatters, right? All right. Word three. What's the underlined part? Alaska. And the whole word? Alaskan. Nice job. And word four, underlined part? Scatter. And the whole word? Scattered. Nice job. All right, let's try the fast way. Pebbled, splatter, Alaskan, scatter. Whoops, that's not right, Miss Taylor. Scattered. All right, there we go. And column three, number one, what words? Number two, what word? Number three, what word? And number four, what word? Nice job. Let's try the fast way. Killer whale, Eskimo, spear, January. Nice job. And column four. Word one, what word? Word two, what word? Word three, what word? And word four, what word? Nice work. Let's try the fast way. Walrus, kayak, sun, restless. Nice job. Alrighty, let's find part B in our textbook. And scoot this Taylor out of the way here. All right. Part B, we are looking at page 53 in our textbooks. And part B is facts about Eskimos. All right. So we are going to read the last story about Henry and Tim, but first we have an information passage. It gives some facts about Eskimos. Facts about Eskimos. Please follow along with me. Track with your finger or a bookmark. In the next lesson, you will read about Eskimos. The winters are very cold where Eskimos live. So everybody, if the winters are very cold, do Eskimos live close to the North Pole or close to the equator? Close to the North Pole. Ooh. Eskimos live near the North Pole in Canada and Alaska. Makes sense. They're cold. They live near the North Pole in Canada and Alaska. Alaska is a state of the United States, but it is far north of the main part of the United States. Touch Alaska on the map. See Alaska way up there? Does Alaska touch the other states of the United States? No. So you can see that the rest of the states are green down below, and then above in that kind of orangish beige, kind of brownish orangish color, that's Canada. And then Alaska is way up there, that green color. It's kind of separated from the rest of the United States. In what direction do you have to go from the main part of the United States to reach Alaska? You would have to go north and a little bit to the west. So north and west. Everybody touch the letter C on the map. Is that letter in Alaska? No. What country is that letter in? Canada. Yes. So remember, Eskimos live in that part of Canada and they live in Alaska. So they live in the northern part of Canada and also in Alaska. All right. Let's think. Going to the next page. Let's see here. There we go. Just go down right there. Picture 2 shows an Eskimo with some of the things that Eskimos use. The Eskimo is holding a fishing pole in one hand. The Eskimo is holding a fishing spear in the other hand. Everyone touch the fishing spear. Mm. The Eskimos wearing warm clothes that are made from animal skins. So they need warm clothing 'cause it's very cold in that northern part of Canada and in Alaska. So you can see his coat looks very warm. Look at what he's wearing on his feet. That footwear is very warm. Near the Eskimo is a sled. Everybody touch the sled. In what season do they use these sleds? Winter. They carry things on the sled and sometimes they ride on the sled too. The dogs that pull the sleds are called sled dogs. Everyone touch a sled dog. These are strong dogs. Some of these dogs, they look like some of you had Miss Albrecht for first grade as a teacher. And I know Miss Albrecht has kind of a dog that looks kind of like a sled dog. I think it's a husky, isn't it? All right. The boat that Eskimos use in the summer is called a kayak. Everyone touch the kayak. I wonder why they don't use kayaks in the winter. Yeah, the water is frozen. All right, and let's make sure we can read these words: Eskimo, kayak, Alaska, spear. All right, let's move on to part C. And part C, back to Canada. All righty, so we're on page 55, and I'm excited to find out what happens with Tim and Henry. All right, so back to Canada. Please follow along with me. We're on page 55. There were hundreds of geese on Crooked Lake and in the fields around it. Henry and Tim circled the lake twice before Henry spotted their flock. Then he pointed his wing toward the south shore and said, "There's our flock right there." All right, so let's see. On which shore was their flock? Yeah, the southern shore. These two geese flew very low over the flock and honked loudly. They're like so excited. Honk, honk, honk. As they made a sharp turn and headed back, Henry could hear some of the geese in the flock saying things like, "Who are those geese?" And "Doesn't that one goose look a lot like Henry?" All right, so everybody, did the geese in the flock think that it really was Henry? They're like, "Doesn't he kind of look like Henry?" Yeah, but they probably didn't think it was Henry because remember, they thought Henry was in Canada. Tim and Henry landed right in the middle of the flock. Oh, how the geese honked and flapped their wings. Can you just imagine? They're so excited. They're like, "Oh, it's you, Henry, and hey, it's Tim." Tim's mom flapped her wings so hard that she sent little feathers flying all over the place. His dad rushed over and gave Tim a big old goose kiss. "My son," he said, "I didn't think we'd ever see you again." Oh my goodness, can you imagine seeing your mom and dad if they thought they weren't going to see you again? Because remember, Tim didn't learn how to fly because his leg was hurt. So they thought, "Oh my goodness, they must be so joyful to see him." Tim had tears in his eyes. As Tim ran off with his mom and dad, Henry's friends formed a big circle around him and honked so loudly that you could hear them for miles. A few minutes later, some of his children, grandchildren, and great grandchildren came from their flocks to give Henry big old goose kisses. All right, let's see. One of Henry's grandchildren said, "We didn't think you were coming, but we knew we would see you next summer when we went north again." "Yes," a great grandchild said, "but now you'll be able to fly back to Canada with us next spring." Henry started to say, "Oh, I don't know." But then he smiled and said, "Sure, we'll all go back to Canada in the spring." So Henry started to say, "Oh, I don't know." I wonder why he said that. Is it because he's not sure that he would be able to make it, maybe? But then he's like, "Oh, sure, we'll all go back to Canada." Yep. And that's what happened. Henry spent the winter in the warm Florida sun. Ooh, try to get a picture of this. It sounds lovely. Napping, eating, swimming, and visiting with his friends and family. About 2 times every week, he would go flying with some of the geese who were less than a year old. He would always make sure that Tim went with them. Henry would give the young geese practice at flying in a V. Henry would honk out orders as the V would swoop over Crooked Lake very low and very fast. Once in a while, Henry would have a sore wing after flying with the young geese, but his wing wasn't too bad. Right, so it sounds like he's having a very nice winter, doing lots of napping and eating and swimming and visiting with friends and flying with the young geese. All right. So he would help them flying in a V and swooping low and fast. And sometimes his wing would hurt, but sounds like he really enjoyed doing this. Henry wasn't really worried about his wing because the trip back north was a lot easier than the trip down to Florida. The trip north started in January, but the geese wouldn't reach Big Trout Lake in Canada until the middle of April. Hmm. So let's see. When would the geese start going north again? In January. And when would the flock reach Big Trout Lake? April. Hmm. Think about how many months would that be? So they start in January, February, March, April. So about 3 months. So 3 months to travel from Florida up to Canada. At the beginning of January, Tim, Henry, and all the geese began feeling restless. Ooh, remember, it's like, oh, I want to do something else. Like they're getting ready to go home. They wanted to fly north. 2 days later, the first flocks took off. Over the next few days, Henry watched hundreds and hundreds of flocks take off. Finally, Henry's flock was ready. My son's name is Henrik. Henry's flock was ready. It flew into the sky and joined other flocks that were leaving Crooked Lake, Reedy Lake, and the other nearby lakes. The geese flew in 4 great V's. The sky was filled with geese. All right. Oh, kind of like our picture. The sky is just full of geese. So the geese were feeling quite restless in January. And so then they started flying north. Was Henry's flock one of the first flocks to take off? No. So the geese that took off from the lakes around Crooked Lake formed how many great V's? 4 of them. So if you look at the picture, it shows how many geese are in the sky when the geese started moving north. A lot. All right. Henry's flock followed the warm weather as it moved north. The flock would stay at a landing place long enough to make sure that the next landing place would not be frozen. That makes sense, a prudent idea. So they would stay at one landing place long enough so that the next landing place would not be frozen. So they must have stayed at some landing places for like a few weeks. Finally, in the middle of April, the flock arrived at Big Trout Lake. There was honking and flapping as the geese met other flocks that had stayed at Big Trout Lake during the summer. 2 days after the flock landed at Big Trout Lake, Tim and Henry said goodbye. Oh, they're saying goodbye. It was time for Tim and the other geese that were almost a year old to form their own flock and fly off to Sandy Lake. The young geese would spend the summer at that lake. Hmm, let's listen to that part again. 2 days after the flock landed at Big Trout Lake, Tim and Henry said goodbye. Makes me kind of sad, like they became such good buddies. Now they're saying goodbye. It was time for Tim and the other geese that were almost a year old to form their own flock and fly off to Sandy Lake. So they're going to make their own flock and go to a different lake. The young geese would spend the summer at that lake. So Tim was going to be part of a new flock, and all the geese that were going to be in his new flock were almost a year old. So that's why Henry's children and grandchildren were not in his flock. They were in their own flocks. And they first went into those flocks when they were, or just before they were 1 year old. Hmm. Before Tim left, he gave Henry a big old goose kiss and said, "Thank you for everything you've done, and I hope that I'll see you next winter at Crooked Lake." Henry said, "I'll be there." Hmm. I think they're going to miss each other. I think Tim will miss Henry, and Henry will miss Tim. I think so. So maybe we can think about a time that we've missed someone. Maybe someone has moved away, someone who was special to us, or maybe we don't get to see them as often, so we can have that kind of a connection to the characters. Like, oh, I know what that feels like when you really miss someone. So we can think about making some of those connections. Like, oh yeah, I bet they're feeling like I felt when I really missed my grandma, or some of those kind of connections. So that is the end of our story about old Henry and Tim. What do you think? Do you like that story? Kind of fun to hear and to learn about old Henry and Tim, and also learn some interesting facts about geese and migration and things like that. So that is the end of our story for today. What you are going to do is you're going to reread the story on your own, and you're going to answer the questions at the end of the story. Remember, you don't need to write them down, but you should be able to answer them correctly. And then you're going to do your workbook. You're going to submit your photos and then read for 20 more minutes. And again, kind of keep thinking about making some connections to Henry and Tim. You can think about, oh, I felt that way when I've missed someone. Maybe you've made a connection to really helping someone. Making a new friend is another connection that we can make. Earlier in our story, we also made the connection about what it feels like to learn something new. Tim was learning how to fly for the first time. So, really kind of making some of those connections to our own lives. And that makes reading more special and enjoyable, and helps us to understand the story too. So, next time we are going to find out what happens in our new story with Umu and Ulak of Alaska. So, have a wonderful rest of the day, readers, and I will see you again soon. Bye.